Well, for the second week in a row, today on Wildlife Wednesday, I talk about favourites. In last week's episode of Wildlife Wednesday, I said I intended to talk about favourites in future episodes of the series. Favourite photos, favourite places, and favourite species. So for this week, although I haven't yet worked out a plan of exactly how I intend to do this, I thought I'd approach the subject for a second time by talking about not only a favourite photograph, a favourite subject, or a favourite place, but in fact, all three at the same time, from the same day some years ago. If I was to pick a name for this episode, rather than just call it by its number, I'd call it Wet Day in the Hide, because that's exactly what it turned out to be. I'd been looking forward to another visit to a friend's hide in the Cooley Mountains, in search of new images of red squirrels in particular, and whatever else happened to turn up. Regular visitors to the chosen spot where the hide was set up were jays, and what I loved about these particular birds was the fact that you always heard them before you saw them. And the advance warning always helped in deciding where they were likely to perch. Getting to the site took about 2 hours in total. The first hour and a half driving from home to my friend's house, where I could leave my car, knowing it'd be safe for the rest of the day while I was away. Switching to his car, we took another short drive of 15 minutes or so to a safe parking place, and then it was a hike of roughly 20 minutes to the actual site of the hide, where he had a feeding station set up for squirrels. While I was setting up my gear in the hide, he was checking the feeders and refilling them if needed. And just before he left me to my own devices, we had a visit from a beautiful fox who seemed totally unfazed by our presence. So naturally, I took some photos of him before he disappeared. Now I was all set for what I hoped would be a successful day in the hide. There was very little activity in the early stages, and then slowly but surely finches and tits started flitting about and feeding on the nuts, which were strategically placed around the area in feeders and in little hollows and holes in branches of trees. But it was quite a while before there was any sign of squirrel activity. The one thing that did come along was the rain, and when it came, it decided to stay for the rest of the day. Once or twice I thought I could hear jays in the distance, but there was no sign of them arriving either. It was still just me, the finches and the tits, and the rain of course, but then in the distance I thought I saw movement in the trees about 50 or so yards away, and sure enough, within a couple of minutes I could see a red squirrel cautiously approaching. And when he came into the clearing where the feeding station was, he seemed to become more relaxed, and he began to feed away from the nut feeders hanging from the branches, which were strategically placed to give anyone using the hide a perfect line of sight to get good images. When he'd finally had his fill, I watched him as he flitted from branch to branch back into the forest until he disappeared from sight. And I went back to watching and waiting for whatever else might arrive. Sadly, unlike my other visits to this hide, not one other squirrel appeared for the rest of the day. And this surprised me because on one of my previous visits, I had actually photographed 5 different squirrels. But thankfully, later in the day, jays did appear and put on quite a show for me. It was on this day that I took my favourite jay photograph, which is this one. So all in all, it was quite a successful day, despite the rain and getting to see only one red squirrel. But even seeing him made the trip worthwhile because he was a real beauty. I think you'll agree. Having started out today talking about favourites, I have actually included 3 as promised. A favourite place? The Cooley Mountains. A favourite photograph? My photo of the jay. And one of my all-time favourite subjects, the red squirrel. So all in all, I think I've covered favourites reasonably well. So with that, I'll leave you to enjoy today's slideshow. Well, thanks again for watching Wildlife Wednesday, folks. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you did, I'd be grateful if you'd give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you do, don't forget to ring the bell. That way you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Till next week, stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands and wear a mask where necessary while continuing to maintain social distancing, because we're not out of the woods yet. Take care, folks. Bye.